Hey folks, and welcome to today's webinar, part of our Ready for Rugby series. This one's going to drill down on the importance of warm-ups and what to include, and really drilling down on some exercises, different things that you're going to do over the course of the coming weeks, stuff you can do at home on your own, and when you start to return back to pitches as well. This is obviously part of the wider Ready for Rugby series, but is also going to be part of a slightly longer process where we'll delve into a few different things over the coming weeks. So next week we're going to look at a webinar on training load and what to do and how much we should do and how we can develop those things. We'll also have a webinar slightly further down the line when we talk about contact preparedness and how we get ready for contact and going back into that activity in rugby. Delighted to say that you're not going to be listening to me for the entirety of the 30 minutes. We have some great experts from within the IRFU that are going to be speaking. We have Nicol van Dijk, who's the Injury Surveillance and Medical Research Officer in the IRFU, Caithriona Yeomans, who's the Medical Department High Performance Game Coordinator, Patrick Dolan, who's a PhD researcher with the Irish Rugby IRIS project, and Jamie Turkington is going to come in with a few questions from a coach development angle as the National Coach Development Manager with the IRFU. I'm not going to give my title because I think I've taken up about 45 minutes so far, just with everyone else's. But look, one of the key things we're going to do now, before we get into it, is just speak about the guidelines for a brief second. We need to make sure that we are aligned, that we are doing everything we can do to be safe in this time and to go and ensure that it's going to be safe and fun when we return back to pitch. So it's important that regardless of our jurisdiction, we ensure that we do exactly as the governments are telling us on either side of the border. So obviously people in the north are going to have the opportunity to get back on pitches over next week, hopefully, and in the south it's going to be a slightly longer wait, most likely leading with youths and minis coming back at the end of April. Important we adhere to all these guidelines, we do best practice during this time and make sure that we're safe and keeping well there. This is a part of, I suppose, a wider exciting development regarding how injury prevention and development and preparedness for rugby as well. And I know Nicol is going to go and speak about that a little bit later on. Without further ado, I'm going to go and hand over to Nicol van Dijk to go and bring us through, and he'll bring through some of the other presenters as we go. How's things, Nicol?
Hey, thanks a lot, Coleman. Thank you to everyone for the opportunity, and thanks for signing in. I know we're getting back to our regular lives. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for the invitation there, Colin, and thanks everyone for signing in. Yeah, it's really good to be part of this series, Ready for Rugby, and we're really excited about what we'll discuss in the next 3 webinars. Thanks to everybody again. I know we're going back to our regular lives, so it's a difficult time sometimes, but this will be available, and I hope you go and catch all of them or catch them on the recording. We're going to speak a little bit today about warm-ups. So as we're going back, the first thing that we'll go back to is our training, although our graduated phase return to training. But why do we still do warm-ups? Why are they important? And what are the key essential bits that we want to include in those warm-ups? So I know for a lot of us, we thought rugby would look like this when we got back. It's been so long, right, guys? Everybody's a little frustrated. Luckily, this is not what rugby will look like. I'm glad to say we are looking at a return to our regular game. But to do that, we need to do it safely. We need to make sure we maximize our performance ability and protect our players' health so that we have the best possible return we can. Now, in light of this, we are planning a larger program that will be launched later in the year. Of course, COVID has also played its role in making our preparations and our development of this a little difficult. Now, there are lots of injury prevention programs out there in the world. New Zealand Rugby has done a big one, South African Rugby has done a big one, and the English Rugby Union has done a big one lately. But we thought we'll take all of that information, simplify it, get to the nuts and bolts, and we're calling it Engage, our rugby readiness program. And it's really about getting your head in the game, getting your body in the game, making sure you're ready to do what you need to do. And we're looking forward to sharing with that a little later in the year. So the content of the 3 webinars today and the next 2 will really look at the content that will be in this whole program. So why do we need warm-ups? I think it's important to just remind ourselves that although the warm-ups are there to physically prepare, it's also an opportunity for everybody to check in, to get a sense of how folks are doing, for everybody to have a bit of crack, to say, hey, here we are, get a sense for everybody. That's what rugby still makes rugby such a great sport, is that community feeling around it. So it sets the scene as well for what you're going to do in training or matches. So it's important to start to build that focus early on, and that's where the warm-up is an opportunity to really set that scene. Also from the environmental point of view, it's our opportunity to get performance ready, right? So there are, whether you're doing training or getting ready for the match, it's that opportunity to wake up all the muscles, to get the juices flowing, so that we're ready to perform when we're on the pitch, or when we start our training. And as a really nice aside, it reduces injuries by 50%. That's you could look across the literature. There's loads of research on this now. At the very minimum, you're going to have half your injuries if you do a proper warm-up session. So it's worth it, and that's why we need to do it. Now, maybe there are some lessons as well from just last year. I know towards the end of 2020, or where was it now? It feels like such a long time ago, doesn't it? But we were all getting back to rugby, ready to return. And then, of course, we got stopped, but the professional game did go back. So we thought we'd just share with you one of the lessons we saw there. Now, in April, May, and June, when we had our lockdown period, or hard lockdown period initially, you could see that even then we had an increase in injuries compared to the year before. But then as we returned to rugby in July, and then especially August, we saw a major jump in injuries. And so that's just because we were pushing folks back. We had lots of games. So lots of condensed games training, people were being asked to perform at a very high level really quickly. So of course, this will be true too for us if we don't make sure that we have a gradual return, we expose players to what they need, and we make sure we get them ready for the rugby they're going to play through proper warm-up. So these are some good lessons to learn from our provincial sides and our national structures, so we don't make the same or lead our players down the same road, but really try and protect their performance by mitigating that risk of injury. And that's ultimately what we're here to do. Now, if we think about health, wellness for our players, it's the foundation of enjoying the game. It's the foundation of good performance. We need players to be healthy, both body and mind, so that they can enjoy and appreciate the spelling mistake there, apologies. But so that the major barrier to that would be injury and illness, right? So if you're not on the field, if you can't train, then you can't enjoy the game. So we want to try and mitigate that risk. And we know from really good work in our IRIS project, especially the Irish Rugby Injury Surveillance Project, you might have heard of before, that we now know that there are major areas to look for in an injury profile. So both men and women is similar in that sense. And I'm going to let Caithriona talk a little bit about that next. So take us through those injury profiles and a little bit of the things that we could keep in mind as we now return to play. So over to you, Caithriona.
As Nicol says, if we look at the last 3 season reports that we've had from the Irish Rugby Injury Surveillance Group, we know that concussion is one of the most common injuries that we see. And it's really important for everyone involved in rugby to understand how to recognise and appropriately manage a concussion injury by following the IRFU's recognise and remove protocols and also our graduated return to play protocols. However, for the purpose of today's webinar, we're going to look at some of the other joints that are commonly injured and that we can reduce those injuries through a structured warm-up, as you'll see later on in the presentation. In both our male and female club game, we can see that the ankle, knee and shoulder are quite commonly injured in both cohorts. In fact, in both the men's and women's senior club game, ankle ligament sprains were the second most common injury year on year. In our male players then, the shoulder joint would be seen next, with injuries like AC joint injuries and shoulder dislocations, whereas in the women we see more knee ligament injuries like your anterior cruciate ligament and your medial collateral ligament injuries. And not only are these injuries quite common, but they also result in a lengthy absence from matches and training. And I think at this stage we've had enough of an absence from training without adding an injury into the mix. So these full reports can be found on the irishrugby.ie website if you want to have a look through them. But as we're getting ready for rugby, I really do think that we need to consider it's been almost a year for a lot of us without any regular, consistent, structured training. So the players that we had pre-COVID are not necessarily going to be the same players we have coming back over the next few weeks. Some players may have managed some individual training during lockdown, whereas others may not. So even across your team and your club, there may be different levels of preparation as you come back over the next few weeks. And with all this in mind, we do need to consider that we'll need a phased return to contact training and potentially competition, depending on whether COVID restrictions allow for that. So this will involve a period of non-contact training, progressing to limited contact, and then onto controlled contact. This is ultimately to help us protect our player performance so that they can get back training safely and enjoying the game to its fullest. The Ready for Rugby support webinars have been aimed to help clubs, coaches and players get ready to return training. So the previous webinars have looked at the various protocols around COVID-19 and considerations for safely getting the club back up and running. And today we're going to talk you through what you can be doing now in preparation for a return to training so that you can maximise your performance, but also your enjoyment once you get back out in the pitch. And then in our upcoming webinars, we're going to talk to you about getting contact ready as your training has progressed over the next few weeks. So if we look at what we consider in a warm-up, I'm not sure if we have Patrick online at the moment. Okay, so I'll just continue on for him. So Patrick Dolan is a PhD researcher in the University of Limerick. He's a strength and conditioning coach, and he's looking at trying to reduce injuries through injury prevention strategies that we're seeing across our club game. And while there are very many drills and exercises we can include in a warm-up, there really are three key areas that we think should be included. And this includes a dynamic preparation, so you're thinking you're running and agility drills to get you ready for movement and activity. Then your individual muscle activation for your motor control and getting your muscles ready to work. And then hopefully over the next few weeks, we'll see that we can get a return to contact. So we're thinking about introducing primers for contact, tackle and various parts of our training as we go through this. So we have a few samples of different exercises, and these shouldn't take any more than 5 to 7 minutes to complete and can be easily done with limited equipment. So we have a couple of exercises and videos that we're going to take you through. So I think Nicol's going to take over here and introduce these exercises to you.
But so these are you'll see those exercises on the screen there, really shouldn't take too long. Patrick, who's doing the research arm of the Engage project that we're going to launch later on, has done a great bit of help and filmed these back at home. So we're going to go through, so you could probably have 20, right? So we're just going to go through 10, and really 5, so 1 up, 1 down, so out and back, 10 reps, 10 repetitions of these different 5 exercises. So these are high knees. You want to make sure you get those knees up, lots of repetitions within the 15-meter setup, then switch to kickbacks or butt kicks. So again, nice high kicks. If you see Patrick coming back here, just, you still want to get your knee up as high as you can, even if you are kicking back, and getting those nice arm swings going. So there we go, high knees, butt kicks. Then we switch to leg swings and Frankensteins. So now I'm moving more to the posterior chain or the hamstring muscles at the back of your thigh. So if we look at the leg swings first, nice big swing throughs, crossover with the arm. Again, not making sure the quality is there. So as high as you can, that's comfortable for each player, switching between both legs, keeping your trunk really stable and upright, making sure you don't fall to the side or forward, really just focusing on that hinge around the hip that we're looking for. If we go to the Frankensteins, you'll see the difference here is more of a high march. Now, again, lots of repetitions here is what we're looking for in that 15-meter straight. Making sure you swing the arms again, nice big long lever movements, keeping the hip as stable as you can, right? So the movement is really a fulcrum around the hip, with a nice straight knee as you're marching across, really hitting that middle of your foot as you come down. So really pushing through the middle of your foot. And then, so that's the leg swings and Frankensteins. If you look at rep rotations, so if you, in the video here, Patrick is demonstrating what a full range would look like, right? So a really nice, big movement to get all the range available in those hips. We know in our professional game now, groin injuries are becoming a higher frequent injury now. So we really want to address this issue, get those hips nice and warm, get them ready for the performance you're going to apply. I think Patrick, like all S&C coaches, cringe a little bit when they see this. So it's fine if you have a little body swerve, body movement, but try and really, if you turn your body, you're going to get less rotation in your hips. So really try and isolate the hips. And the same thing for the back hip rotation. So really moving through that full range of motion. It doesn't have to be as slow as this. Patrick's really making the effort here to point that out, but as little a side body movement or trunk movement as we can, really making sure we get those hips nice and warm and moving through the range, right? So again, we're not going to crucify anybody for cheating a little bit, right? But we do want to keep the quality high. So forwards and back hip rotations is our next exercise. Then the side shuffles and high skips. So we're still in our 15-meter setup. Remember, side shuffles going up. Now again, bike nice and straight. Patrick's feet there isn't touching each other. That's ideal. We really want to make sure that as the foot comes in, the other foot moves out. So in the middle of the foot, nice good contact there. That's a little lazy again. You know, that's okay, but we want to keep high repetitions, get down nice and low. And then if we go to the high skips, so really pushing off through that foot, really making sure you get as much power or explosiveness as you can going through the movement. Use the arms to really create momentum around the movement. Really high knees is what we're looking for there. Great. And then if we move on to our karaoke or grapevine, as some of you might know it, right? So again, really making sure we get nice high knee action. You can see Patrick trying to keep his trunk, and he does a good job there, keeping his trunk nice and still. So again, moving through our lower quarter, lower body movement. That again, at the end, there is a little bit of a lazy example. So we want to keep that high knee movement, get as much range as we can. And again, with our back shuffle. So really making sure we get into a good low position and moving backwards with a lot of frequency throughout the 15 meters. So back pedals there. Those are the main exercises we were going to demonstrate today. So if we move on, so that's our dynamic preparation. Should take you 5 minutes, maybe 7, but really not more than that. If you've got your 15-meter grid set out, and we do 10 reps, so out and back for each exercise. Really simple but really effective way to get your body moving. If you do have exposure to S&C coaches, of course, you know, this is some of the basics movements that you would see and that you'd be very familiar with. So we really want to emphasize again today that the quality is really important. So we'll really quickly go through our muscle activation. Now there's a host of exercises you could choose from. We took 4 that we think are really important. Again, shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes, and all the exercises you repeat 10 times, right? So if we start with our squat, we all know the squat. It's one of the most basic human movements we do, and that is used in training, and it's still one of the big rocks. So keep your back straight, try and make the movement happen around your hips. So the focus of the movement is around the hips, heels down, toes down, as far as you can. That's a nice body movement. Of course, later in the season, you can add the frequencies and the reps and even a bit of weight as we progress, but make sure the quality of this movement's good. In between these movements, we want to suggest that you do a passing drill. Now, there's loads of level up webinars and training that can help you out there. And I know a lot of you have this in your repertoire. So just pick one of your comfortable passing drills, 30 to 45 seconds, keep it interesting, get the ball in their hands, and then we're back to the second movement. Here we're going for our lunge. So again, a basic movement we all know really well. Patrick actually prefers this. It looks like he's stepping forward, but it's a step back, right? So there's a coordinated arm swing. You're keeping your body nice and upright, and there's a mid-foot load so you keep your toes down. So don't stand up on your toes, right? There's a mid-foot load as you go back, stepping back onto your foot and then lunging into that position. So the right leg there would be the leg stepping back into that lunge position. Again, keeping the quality of the movement high. Pass drill, for 45 seconds or so. You can switch it up. You can do the same one. You can do all the exercises together if that fits better with your session. This is just a suggestion to keep the session interesting, and that first 10 minutes kind of light, and really get the guys to start working with the ball as well. So the next exercise is our hip hinge. So again, we want nice and soft knees. Don't overextend or hyperextend your knees. The tailbone is up, so that's a nice cue for folks to say, hey, keep your tailbone up, your shins back, and you move forward and you stop when your hips stop you, right? So as full of a range of motion as you can. Really nice work here for the hammies to get them ready for the load that they'll take when they're sprinting. So it's a great preparation exercise as we move along into the training. So again, our passing drill just in between then. Again, whichever one you prefer. And then we thought a trunk stability exercise would be good. So reaching out without rotation, right? So again, trying to keep that trunk nice and stable. The load comes from through the shoulders and the hip, and you push away from the ground. So there's a feeling of pushing away as you're extending your arm, extending your leg back in that crossover manner. 5 sets of 5 or 5 times each side. Making sure that the quality of that movement is good again, and we'll end it off again with an easy drill if you need to. But then that's kind of the preparation that's really good for these early stages, right? So you've got your dynamic prep, and we've shown you those really nice 12 or so exercises you can include there today. 5 minutes of that, 5 minutes of muscle activation. Those 4 big basic exercises are still really good ones to choose from. And of course, there are others that you can play around with and keep it interesting with the pass drills in between. Later on, and in webinar 3 of this series, we'll probably talk a little bit more about contact prep. I know everybody's in different phases. If you're going back to underage school sports in the north, you might be doing this a little earlier, but in the next few weeks, we'll get to that too. So those are the 2 basic things: dynamic prep, muscle activation, and this will all form part of our Engage program that we're going to launch later in the year. So I hope that's useful. I hope that's some really basic, good information that you can take back for yourself, if you're a player, for your team, for the coach. Make sure you hit those big targets. Make sure you use the warm-up to really prepare for the training and to get players back into that space where we're ready to expose them to what they need for getting back to full rugby and full training. So thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Nicol. Look, and to Caithriona as well, a really, really interesting insight into some of the activities we can do and why they're important. I suppose from my own kind of point of view, you know, some of the things that I would have picked up from that is, and it was a key statement you made, Nicol, is ready for rugby that they're going to play. So again, that's a key part of our, you know, ready for rugby program and how we return to pitches. It's understanding what our players are preparing for, what are they going to be doing, future-proofing them in that. You know, and you know, if you look at some of the exercises there, so graciously displayed by Patrick, I'm just glad. I've been often compared to Frankenstein when I'm playing rugby, so I'm glad that's coming in. But the, you know, things such as like the trunk stability, the hip hinge, really interesting things that we need to actually go and focus on, and things that we probably haven't looked at if we have been training at home. So really, really good stuff there. What we'll do now is I'm going to bring in Jamie Turkington to go and ask a few questions from a coach development perspective, and then we'll circle back to a few questions from yourself. So Jamie, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Colin, and thanks, Nicol and Caithriona, for that really good insight around prevalence of injuries in the game, and particularly over this period of time when we're coming back onto the pitch to train. And I suppose with the information you shared, there was a lot there around what our players can be doing over the next period of time, be it covering the guidelines when they get back on the pitch and the period of time that might take for them to get back there. But just for the coaches on the call, Nicol, if you don't mind, you've covered a lot of the activity that the players can be doing over this period of time. Are there any considerations you think that the coaches should have, particularly when they get back onto the pitch to work with the players? Bearing in mind the period of time they've been off the pitch, the variation that the players will have had to prepare themselves to get back on the pitch. Just in that moment, those sort of first 3-4 weeks, what sort of things would you be suggesting for the coaches, particularly in around that idea of structured warm-up and things that they should keep an eye on?
Oh, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, you know, everybody, I think we have to keep in mind, and when we think back about that, why the warm-up is important, what we're really talking about, if we summarize it neatly, is body, mind, people, and place, right? So the body is obvious. We're doing that. We're going to get your body back in shape, ready, rugby ready. The mind is important because we've all felt the effect of this now. So make sure you're checking in with the folks, you know, with your players, you know, how they're feeling. There might be some anxiety about coming back. They might be really excited, and you need to hold some of your players back a little bit. Get the senior guys to step in and do a bit of mentoring if there are a need for that, and make sure you're checking in with the guys from a welfare, from a wellness point of view. The people, right? So again, I think we're all playing a responsibility and have a role in this now. So make sure wherever your support structure is there and ready to help. You're in unison with the message you're giving to the players. They understand where we're going and how even with this uncertainty, how we're going to unify around our return to sport. And I think importantly, not to forget the place, right? Our environment, we've been away from our rugby environment or training environment for a long time. Make sure you're familiar with the pitch conditions, familiar with what's available to the players, even with our restrictions in place, and make sure we abide by them as well, and how we restructure that to make sure the environment is still rugby friendly. And I think if the coach keeps that body, mind, people in place there, I think you do our players a big service.
Thanks for that, Nicol. And just one final piece from me would be in around the applicability of structured warm-up and the content you shared with us today. Would that be applicable to all age ranges of players, or would it be curtailed to some? And what would your thoughts on that be?
Yeah, I'm biased. I've loved rugby my whole life, and rugby is a position-specific sport. You know, it is still a position-specific team sport, but the stuff we showed you today really applies across, right? So everybody needs this kind of warm-up to then move into their specific activities, whether that's line-out scrums, so very specific rugby movements, or multi-directional movements. So I would say it's important that this cuts across, and to really be open about that. This is the components we share in the professional game as well. So this applies, you know, right through. Of course, I think keep in mind the ability and the level of your players, so that you are adjusting the exercises where it's necessary, especially to the underage groups. But that might just be very subtle things like shortening the run, making sure they pay attention to how they move, little things that might make a difference. But in general, I think this does cut across all our age groups and our players.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jamie and Nicol, for that. And look, you know, I know a number of the coaches and players online have asked a similar question around about age specific and what age ranges would you recommend. You know, it's something we can do all our lives at all stages. It's never going to be a disservice to us. It's going to benefit us. And an important thing to remember is how we keep it fun if we're doing those things. So especially at those minis ages, you know, can we give them funny names, do Spider-Mans, bear crawls, flush the toilet, different things like that are going to keep people engaged, and much like yourself, Nicol, having a wee giggle there, like the kids are going to love it because they're laughing, they're having a bit of fun with that. Look, what we'll do is
can I just add something there, real quick, Colin? Because you know, to all the underage coaches or age group coaches on the call, I think the other thing you're doing by implementing this kind of structured warm-up is getting players ready for what they'll do for the rest of their rugby lives. You know, so it's like kids don't tear their hamstrings, like we know that, right? But it really sets them up for what they're going to do when they grow older. And some of these will fall into our development pathways. There'll be players that we're looking to groom for the future. So I think it's important, and it sets good examples. It sets good habits to really, as we said right at the start, you know, get their performance ready, enjoy the game, and reduce the risk of injuries.
Could put it better myself, Nicol. Look, there's been a number of questions coming in there. We're going to go and target a few of them. First things, I'll go and I'll kind of cover them off. So, recommended timelines for a return to contact. So the IRFU have finalised the document as of yesterday on that contact preparedness and our return guidelines. So that's going to be released in the coming days. So people will be available to go and develop their sessions based on that document. Again, it's a sample document, but it will give you a bit of an insight into the steps we need to take. And again, one of the key things in that is we need to understand that when will they be playing contact, how can we integrate them back onto pitch, and really emphasize it's fun, social. Let's get them back out there and enjoy themselves. And one of the things I picked up, Nicol, from you speaking about warm-ups was that social interaction and that connection again with your teammates and your friends. Obviously, under the current guidelines, we're not allowed to congregate pre or post training. So that's your opportunity to go and catch up with people and to stay relevant. Another couple of questions there that I can box off. Will the slides be sent out and is this being recorded? Yeah, so everything will be sent out over the coming days, probably at the start of next week. We'll get that sent out to you. Anyone who's registered will have an opportunity and they'll go and have a chance to get them out, and we'll try and make sure that they're applicable in a way that so they can be sent out maybe on WhatsApps and things like that. I'll just bring you in there, Nicol.
Just to add to that, we know that some players are still at home, still having to train at home. There might be a period of that, so we will add some home exercises, a program that we released in the last year. But maybe for those players that are still at home that can't come to the training sessions yet, we'll still add some exercises they can keep going with at home as well.
I must say, excellent manners there, Nicol, putting your hand up to go and interject there. I'm really impressed now. Very well schooled. Look, we'll get to it now. I suppose one of the questions that's come in there is going back to the injury increase in 2021 or in the last season compared to the season before that. Was there a similar ratio of contact to non-contact injuries, or was there a large increase? And we'll go to yourself, Nicol, on that one.
Yeah, that's an astute observation. You're absolutely spot on. There were more non-contact injuries. Now, we assume that is because we've asked the players to train. Maybe something to keep in mind that we've thought of across the provinces is when we were able to go back to pods training but no contact yet, what we saw is we made them do a lot more running than normal because we wanted to fill the session, we wanted to make it meaningful, and maybe we got that. Yeah, we could have done it a little bit better. But the injury prevalence was probably because of the high number of games that the players went back to. So we finished the Pro 14, we were straight into the next season, we got all the internationals coming up, the Autumn Cup, finished 6 Nations into the next one. So we think that we were just asking players to really stick in that high match demand. But it's mindful that you will probably have more non-contact and are probably of a lower severity muscle type injuries rather than the big sticks like ankle sprains and knee ligament injuries. So yeah, we want to try, and that's why we want this gradual phase. We really expose them to that, and that's what we'll cover in the next webinar as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Nicol. Just one follow-up query has come in there that I suppose I can box off about the appropriateness of structured warm-ups for 7-year-olds. Again, it's about making it fun, but absolutely, through a game, you could be playing a game of any sort of tig tag, ball tag, and then it's a brief stop. Let's do some dynamic exercises through that. And again, as Nicol has said, it's preparing them as they go forward the whole of their life to have that positive outlook on that warm up and injury prevention. It doesn't have to be, okay, here's 20 minutes where you're set aside and you go and you stand there, getting cold and doing this sort of stuff, but it can be incorporated into fun gameplay and an opportunity again to get those dynamic movements going. One of the other questions, just on the last video that we showed, was the bird dog versus bear crawl. So is the final muscle activation movement you suggest a bird dog, so knees on the floor, or from a bear crawl position, weight on the toes? And Nicol, we might go to yourself on that one.
Yeah, I think either of those are fine. They have slightly different outcomes and areas of focus. So I think the bird call, if we use that term, is probably the better option to start with. The bear crawl is, of course, something that's used often in rugby training and in warm-up. So, and it will actually, I think, be one of the exercise options that we'll include in the Engage program. So, absolutely fine. I think whichever one you feel comfortable with, and if you feel the one's a little bit easier, you can switch to the other one as well. As long as the players are comfortable in executing the exercise well, I think we're in a good place.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicol. I suppose just for the last question, we'll come to yourself, Caithriona. I know you spoke about some of the things to remember when we're actually going and returning back to pitches and returning back to activity of whatever nature. Do you want to just drill down and just pick out maybe a couple of the key things again, just as those take-home points?
Yeah, thanks, Colm. I think it's just important to remember that even if people were staying quite fit over lockdown and managing a little bit of training at home, some of the things that they were probably missing was some of that change of direction and multi-directional movement patterns, and that'll be what'll be important, I think, to gradually bring back in as they prepare to go back for training. So some of these drills, as Patrick very well demonstrated, can be done at home in your back garden if we get the nice sunshine that he has over the next while. So you could gradually bring those in. And again, these are at a very nice level for anyone that can start off doing these if they haven't been doing them over the last year, and then they can be brought back into their warm-up. So I think really focusing on those dynamic agility and multi-directional movements, particularly given the rate of ankle sprains that we do see in our domestic game.